Hello, friends. Welcome to Akulmak Live. My name is Chandrakant. Today, we want to discuss the very matter which affects all organizations, small, large, and medium. It's about finding the right leadership skills for them to run the business. And that has become a big challenge because now, because of lockdown, the HR functions are not functioning appropriately at the appropriate level. At the same time, finding the right skill with the right attitude is also becoming a big challenge. So, this is the matter of discussion for today's program. Before we start a discussion, a word on our giveaway. Akulmak works with many SMEs and startups world over, helping them in not only building their sales and marketing teams, but also help them in improving their success rate. As you can see, we have summarized our years of knowledge into these easy to follow steps, which can be used by any smart leader to promote their group or a company. In order to encourage people to take the right step at the right time, we have used this proprietary graph in our corporate memorabilia so that the knowledge can be accessed by whoever, whenever, wherever it is needed. You can become eligible to get one of these beautiful gifts delivered to your doorstep for free. All you need to do is to subscribe our channel and smash that like button. Also, please watch this entire video and provide your valuable comments, suggestions, or you could also share your experiences. Person with the best comment and interaction would be chosen to become a free recipient of one of these displayed items here. In addition, we would invite you to Akulmek Live to participate in our show as a distinguished panelist. What are you waiting for, friends? Go for it. Now, let's get back to our discussion. So, friends, let me introduce the guest for today. Her name is Aparna Ranadive. She joins us from Mumbai and she is actually wearing three hats. She is the CEO of Practical Magic Advisory, which is a high level CEO level advisory, which basically deals with matters which are related with the chief executives. She is also the CEO of Gateway to India, and she is also wearing another hat, and she's working as executive director of Global Chamber of Commerce, Mumbai edition. So, without further ado, let me present Aparna to you. Welcome to the show, Aparna.
Hi, good afternoon, CK. How are you doing? And thank you so much for welcoming me to the show.
It was always a pleasure, Aparna. And today we want to take advices from you around how to build a leadership team for your organization, and what is the important aspect of the trait of a leader which you want to be working for your organization. So over to you, Aparna.
Thank you so much. My corporate experience has been over 2 decades now, roughly around 26 years to be more precise, and have cut across different industry sectors. So, right from media and entertainment to financial services to retail to engineering and what have you. And I've seen different stages of organizations at different points in time, and that I was a part of. And at every point in time, I realized that the leadership capability in the organization. Now, it could be at different levels. And leaders are not just at the top. You have leaders at all levels. But how does the organization spend time and effort and take the initiative to develop this leadership in the organization is what really decides the future of that organization, because it's very easy. I feel it's very easy to bring in people from the outside at all points in time. It's very easy to kind of say that, okay, these are the positions that I have, I will give it out to a search consultant, and I'll get in the best of talent inside. But and I'm sure a lot of chief executives also understand the fact that by the time the talent comes on board and starts performing, so at that level, if you're talking about T minus one, T minus two kind of levels, at that levels, anybody has roughly around anywhere between a month to 3 months in terms of notice period. So you spend about 2 to 3 months for the time for that person to come on board, and another 3 months at least to get adjusted to the environment, the culture, the working, and start delivering. So we're talking about anywhere like a 6 month period before you can actually start seeing tangible results. the predominant work or the groundwork can start happening, but actually in terms of tangible results, it's anywhere between 6 months to a year that you can start. And then by the time it's 1 year's time, it's the end of 1 year, you have time for assessment of what this leader has delivered and not delivered and so on. So it and then in times like these, especially in times like these, the uncertain times that we're living in today, I think it makes more sense that the organization starts looking inwards, starts this, because this is a period of sustenance. It's a time that you can actually build, so that you can build sustenance in the organization, in the business for the future. Now, if you start looking inwards and start seeing that there are people who are, everybody comes with talent, right? Now, there could be levels of talent, there could be levels of talent. Right? So if you start looking inwards, start identifying these talent and developing them, and not just leave it onto the heads of HR to really do this as an initiative or as a intervention, but collectively the leadership of the organizations should get involved in this entire process, and then start developing these leaders. Now, if I have to give you an example, may not be from the corporate, and I don't want to deliberately give it from the corporate, but if you look at the military service, right? So the military is an organization in itself, and every individual who's joining that, so whether it is in India, whether it is internationally, if you look at the top military academies in the world, so I will take NDA, the National Defense Academy, is one of them. And if you look at maybe the Sandhurst in UK, or if you're looking at the US military academy in the US, at every point in time they have this young blood which is inducted into this organization, which is brought in, so that you're constantly training, you're constantly developing. Now, these are the very people who want to become generals and brigadiers and starts chief of staffs at all levels. If you look at it today, in today's day, the chief of staff of the Army, Navy and Air Force in India, they were all NDA students at the same NDA cadets in the same batch at the same time, and they've now risen to become the chief of staffs here. So the point I'm trying to drive home is that I'm not saying organizations and corporate can become like the military, but the ethos is pretty much the same, right? So the organization as a structure, as a being, came into force looking at what the military, it kind of draws its own working and everything from the military as a point of reference, right? So now, if that be the case, there are no silos there to say, oh, I'm a gunner, so I will only do that. I'm this one, I will only do this, or I'm a technical guy. Now, these guys, if you look at the people from the special forces, if you're looking at these people, they're all like task force developed within the organization. That should any calamity come by, should any requirement come, this force is a ready available force to be deployed at any point in time, at any place, right? I'm saying, why not use the same analogy within an organization as well, in the corporate, that you have this ready available talent with you, rather than going through a stage program of just a high potential development, or whether it is a leadership development in the organization as a intervention, and putting them through a series of training programs, sending them internationally for certificate programs, and then you come back and you kind of just come back and blend into the same culture, and then everything goes back to where it was. As against that, if you really look at TAS as an organization, so I was lucky enough to be a part of a small bit of TAS at that point in time, and TAS is the Tata Administrative Services. And as a young manager with with the Tata Group, I was involved in some sense or the other with this group, and trying to develop it. Now, TAS, if you are a TAS pass out, or if you are a TAS inductee, or a candidate, there is a certain amount of already assumed pedigree associated with it. That you come from a good college, or you come from a good institution, and then you have been groomed by the organization, within the organization, with a clear objective that tomorrow, sooner than later, if there's a business which is launched, you will then sort of become you will develop the capability of leading that business. So that's a one point agenda that they have, that that you are developed to become the top leader in that organization, and then everything around it is developed like that. So you're put through different functions, you're put through different competencies are developed, you're put through different situations, all of that, so that you turn out to be a leader who's capable of leading a business, and not just the P&L but the entire business, as it were, right, as a CEO. Now, if not every organization has that vision or has that capability as well, and that is where I strongly feel that this is especially the time where you can actually make use of interventions like that, where you can start identifying these people from different from different parts of the organization, who come in with different capabilities and competencies, and yet show that spark and yet show that potential to be going on to lead your organization, right? So that ways you develop sustenance as well in the organization, because tomorrow should a time come where something happens, and there is an exigency that you need to manage, or then there is a internal growth level that you have to start looking at, then you're not just looking at performance, you're not just looking at potential, you're not just looking at appraisals, and kind of matching it all together and concocting it together, and kind of creating another leadership level of sorts. Yeah, having said that, a lot of the number of futuristic organizations, or future looking organizations, forward looking organizations, they have a well planned leadership development plan in place. But having said that, the need is very different today to look at it very differently, and that is something that I'm trying to bring home. Yeah.
All right. So I think this is a
So
very
that's what I had to say.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I think when you explain it, it sounds so easy. I have a question, Aparna ji, that is regarding the leadership itself. So while a lot of people go through different courses, you mentioned TAS and you mentioned armed services. There is a very clear mandate to develop leaders of tomorrow who will lead the platoons into the battle. The problem with our industry today is who will identify what leadership is. There are two kinds of leaders. One is a leader which will sit in the boardroom and make spreadsheet graphs and plan things on a paper. There are other leaders like General Patton who will go out and fight it out and do it, lead it from the front. Now, the problem is who will identify these leaders? Is it Eisenhower you're looking for, or is it General Patton that you're looking for? Because the deciding authority between these two leaders is someone else. So I think the challenge is to identify what type of leader you need. And my question to you is, therefore, is that how do you identify what type of leader you need for your organization?
Okay, so I think General Patton is a favorite example I often hear and I give, but at the same time, Field Marshal Manik Shaw is one of the classiest examples of a leader that one can think of, and homegrown again, right? But having said that, these people have been gems who cannot be recreated. They came at a certain time. They came with a certain mental makeup. They came with a certain ethos, and they came during situations which really required that kind of. Today, thankfully, situations are different. They're not really as critical as they were back then. But nonetheless, I mean, nothing really takes away the kind of credit that we have to give to our people as well. But all that said, I think to answer your question, there are organizations and there are organizations, and there are leaders and there are leaders. So now, just because I was reading a post put up by somebody on LinkedIn some time back, and he said, it's nice to hear about something about whatever. There was a topic being discussed, and he said, thanks for giving this to us as leaders. Now, if you're declaring yourself as a leader out there, and saying, okay, it's nice to have given this thing to us leaders, that in itself for me is a big is a big flashpoint, because you are calling yourself a leader, uh, which ideally somebody else should be. A leader has to have followers, right? And the followers need to look up to you. You cannot go out and declare yourself to be a leader just like that. you know And it's like Modi saying, "Oh, I'm the leader. I'm the prime minister of the country. Therefore, I'm the leader of the country." Not so. He may or may not have those capabilities. He may or may not be a good leader material. But just because he's sitting at the helm of affairs does not really make or not make him a leader. That's it's controversial, but all the same, I'm just saying. I'm just putting a perspective to it. So coming back to your question in terms of what is it that leadership as a quality that we are looking for, is I believe very strongly that a leader, and especially in these times, are people who are able to look into the future, who are able to identify and understand where is this world going to go to. Of course, these are different, very difficult times, very different times. Nobody's experienced these times before. But having said that, if you have that foresight to say that this is where my organization is, why did I start this organization, the purpose was different at a different point in time, the purpose still remains the same, but can I just tweak it to suit the future, or can I just tweak it to make sure that it is aligned and can give back to the society, to the business world, or to my employees or to my stakeholders in the future. If that be the case, what is the kind of competence that I need within my organizations? What are the different things that I need to do? And so basically, I'm trying to say somebody who has the foresight, somebody who has the willingness to look at people internally and to grow people internally, because unless and until you take your own people with you, you will never be able to succeed as a leader. You should be able to take your own people, and your people should be there ready to back you up. If you turn around as a leader and say that, okay, we heard about Lee Iacocca taking $1 as a salary back in our MBA days, but how many people today will do that? And if you're doing that, will somebody come up to you and say, okay, if you're taking $1 as a salary, I'm going to take maybe 50% of my salary today because I have to support what you're doing and yet support my family as well. If that, and not in literal terms, but I'm saying, even philosophically, if somebody just comes up and is there to support you as a leader, you've arrived. I think you would have made that impression, that feeling, you develop that feeling within your people. I mean, we've heard of so many historical instances or historical leaders. Now, I always believe that history is always a guide for the future. May not be in the true sense, in the essence, but there are things that you can always take away from history. Yeah, times are different back then. Times were different, but there were leaders for whom their own people were willing to lay down their lives. Why? Not because they were in service, not because they were mandated to do that. Yeah, but they were doing that because for the love of that purpose, the cause, and for the love of that leader as well. That leader is going into the trenches with them and leading from the front. Now, today also, there, I mean, I have a lot of friends in the forces as well. They all, some of them tell me that it's not always the case that the leader leads from the front, as far as the top notch leaders and so on. But it's a different ball game completely. There they know that there is somebody who will lead them, who will take care of them, who will manage them, who will make sure that their growth is ensured. Now, if you take the same analogy back to an organization, if you keep saying that the people who are with me are not competent enough, a large organization was looking for the top candidate, the top leader for that organization, and for many years that organization was not able to find a leader. Now, whose failure is it? Is it the failure of the people who you've grown for years in that organization? Or is it the failure of the leader to not be able to see that leadership competency in people? Or is it the failure of the leader to have not been able to develop another leader under you? So it leaves me with that question, that whose failure is it really? So are we developing the right leadership competencies? Are we developing a right succession to the to the positions that are there? Or are we looking at things arbitrarily and saying, acha, aaj ye chala gaya, to uska replacement has to be found quickly, or somebody else? Now, a lot of professional organizations don't do that, but there is a whole host of them who are still in that process, and where the churn is much higher. So then, unless and until you develop this next level of leaders, you will never be able to have a sustainable organization. The third thing that comes to mind is that every time you lose out on a senior individual from the organization, imagine the kind of data and the history. I'm not saying he's going to steal data, but the experience, the knowledge of the business and with the business, the experience of having worked with different stakeholders within the organization and outside the organization, the relationships that he would have developed, all of that just goes away with him. How much can you keep taking backup of? You can't take a backup of what's here. You can't take a backup of what's in your heart and your mind. So then it just all goes away, right? So all of these things are very, very critical when you're looking at leadership at a larger level. And if you're developing a think tank, I believe every organization should have a central think tank, and which kind of is like a special forces group which is ready and developed and can take on any project. They'll be the best people to be deputed on projects, new projects, rather than putting in management trainees, and rather than picking up people from one place or the other, or developing a project team and sending it. You can have this entire task force created from across the organizations and put across them. So it's leadership, as far as I'm concerned, is a favorite subject and a subject at the same time. So yeah.
Well, Aparna ji, you mentioned about leadership must have a foresight and strategic thinking. I think you mentioned that briefly. My question, therefore, would be conflict management, because you also mentioned that you have to take the team along. You can't
Yeah.
say, "Hey, I mean, you don't know anything. You can't disrespect your team. You are leader because your team is working for you effectively."
Correct.
But the problem is then when you are developing leaders within your team so that your workload can be reduced, the challenge is that there are two leaders who are reporting to you. One guy will say, let's go left, other guy will say, let's go right. So in those cases, how a leader should manage the conflict which is arising within his own team?
Okay, so it's a very interesting question. I have seen a lot of such situations. And then finally, what happens is that when the leader or the supposed leader cannot resolve that conflict, that entire thing is deflected to the HR, saying HR said, "Pucho, they will manage it." Or then the HR head is called and said, "Okay, these two are fighting, resolve it, or help us resolve it." But that's really not the case. That should be. Now, first and foremost, if you're thinking, and conflicts will happen because no two individuals will think alike, right? So the thinking may vary. The other question, or the other thing that may be one of the reasons, is could be a difference in understanding or difference in communication, a vested interest somewhere, strategic vested interest somewhere, that I score a one up on the other, so that these things happen, right? It's a politically challenged environment many a time, so that is the reason why these things happen. Now, in such a situation, it is the duty of the leader to try and see how best this conflict can be resolved. Now, the best way, I think, and I've seen certain leaders whom I respect manage it like that, and I've sort of tried to imbibe that same style in my own working as well. Is that you understand where the conflict arises from and why. Understanding the why is very critical, and then once you understood the why, sitting and explaining it to both parties is equally important. The third is that when you see that I think the worst thing that a leader can do is listening to one party and depending on that arriving at a decision for the other party. That's the worst thing. You completely lose out on your entire leadership credibility the moment that happens, because you start playing favorites in that case. But in a situation like this, I think the best way to resolve conflict is to be able to sit with both parties, conflicting parties, understand the reason of the issue that is causing that conflict, trying to resolve and reason it out to both of them. And then finally, when both of them are not aligning, there will come a time when the leader will necessarily have to step in and say, this way, or this is the way to do it. But ultimately, the objective or the cause should not suffer, because these two parties are not aligning with each other. Finally, the cause is more important than the two parties, right? So the leader has to have that capability and that understanding to say that, okay, now this is going a little beyond what it should be, and this is where I will call it short, and I will say that this is where my decision will hold right and hold correct, and both of you just simply follow my decision, because you're not able to fulfill your leadership duties and not able to live up to what you're expected to. So now here is my order, and or rather my recommendation and my suggestion, and you will follow this suggestion. That is the only way to, if resolving goes beyond the point, you can't really resolve it.
Okay, so I have come to the last question of the show today, and which is related to the current economic situation.
Right.
It has been predicted by everyone, all the gurus and all the strategists, if you look at world over, that going forward, 50% of the jobs will be outsourced, including the leadership roles. So people like CFOs, CXOs, CMOs, CEOs will be outsourced. Principal of the schools will be outsourced. Teachers will be outsourced, and everyone will get remuneration based on fixed deliverables. And that is how this decade will go. And the number of jobs are almost like 50 to 60%. So that means it's going to be a paradigm shift for the organizations. In such a scenario, how organizations should figure out what are the leadership chunk that they are looking for and attach it to a deliverable. Is there a method that you have in mind and you would like to tell our viewers?
That's a very tricky question. Um, okay, so if you ask me personally, I think while a lot of jobs will be outsourced, yes, we've heard that. But there are still certain jobs which are which will be or which will continue to be very integral to the organization. So you can't have a CEO who is somebody who's come from the outside, maybe like a consultant, but you can't have somebody who's coming in from the outside leading the organization. It will be a very detached kind of a relationship. It will not have that kind of sense of ownership associated with it, and then it will be a very very what should I say? It will, for the want of a better word, I'll use mercenary like, because then that person will be gunning for his or her own benefits and profits, and then the larger good of the purpose for which that business existed will not remain valid anymore, is my way of looking at it. But having said that, jobs like the CFO, the CHRO, the CMO, all of these will definitely they stand a chance to get outsourced. Even today, we're saying that if HR is really not adding that much value to the organization, is not making business sense. So if you don't start talking the language of the business, if you don't start getting involved in the business, and you're siloized in your ivory tower and saying only HR and nothing more, then there will come a time where business will not want you anymore, and there'll be somebody else who will be able to come and take on that role. That, yes. Now the second part of your question about productivity. So this is an ongoing debate that a lot of organizations and even bigger organizations are also dealing with. So one is the element of work from home, where every possible parameter of monitoring the person or monitoring performance that used to exist while the organization was still in force, and the working from office was still in force, has been completely turned on its head. Right now, the other aspect being that am I so effective that I'm doing the work in like 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever, an 8 hours job? Am I even still expected to do an 8 hours job working from home and working from or working on the same deliverables? These matrices are still to be sort of designed, and I'm sure a lot of organizations are doing it. But I think at the end of the day, productivity is what will really make the difference, or be the only deliverable at the end of the day, because it is finally what you produce and what you sort of deliver, and the measurables of those deliverables that will really count, and not how many hours did you put in weekdays, weekends, weeknights, whatever. That will really not make any difference whatsoever anymore. It will be how much have you been able to deliver as against what has been asked for you from you. That will be the only currency of performance going forward. you know
So I think we got some answers, and I'm sure in the following programs, when you talk about the leadership, I think there will be, because it's, the subject itself is very vast, and what strategy works for company A may not work for company B, as you rightly mentioned in the beginning of the show itself. So thank you so much,
Right.
Aparnaji, for coming over and opening up your minds. I'm sure our viewers will pick up some of the key elements of our discussion and implement in their organization. So I hope to meet you again in the next show.
Thank you so much, CK. Really been a pleasure being here.
Bye bye for today and have a nice weekend. We will catch up next week again.
Bye bye.